Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365 and horrible news really today. I really wish I didn't have to make this video and I didn't have to make this video and I wasn't going to make this video or anything like that. But unfortunately, the news we had all feared have been confirmed. A body now confirmed to be Shad Gaspard has been discovered on Venice Beach. His body was discovered near where he went missing on Sunday after getting caught in a riptide with his son. Shad Gaspard was 39 years old. It is such a horrible story and a heartbreaking story and such a tragic story. And first and foremost, my thoughts and prayers go out to Shad's family, his friends. He has a young son. He has a wife. What makes this story so tragic is that reports were that he went out swimming in the sea, in the ocean, with his son on Sunday. His son is 10 years old, and like I said previously, they'd got caught up in a riptide. Coast Guards came out to make the rescue. I believe they'd went over to Shad, who instructed them to go and get his son first and save his son, which thank God they did, and they did successfully rescue his son. His son's, by all accounts, is okay as you can be in this situation, I suppose. But unfortunately, they were not able to get Shad. He was reported missing on Sunday, and we've been sort of waiting to hear news, even though it looked more and more bleak as time went on, if they could find him. And then reports came out this morning that the body of an unidentified male had been found in the area, and unfortunately the body was later confirmed to be Shad Gaspard. He was only 39 years old, as I said. It's so heartbreaking. It really is. You factor in the circumstances with his son, and I mentioned on social media that his last act is one of the most selfless things you can possibly imagine. He put his own life on the line instead of his son. He saved his son from what could have been just horrific. The death of a child is always horrible, and he prevented that, and he put his life on that, and it was just such a selfless act. And I said he was a hero in his last act, and that's exactly it. He was an absolute hero, and it's just a horrible and tragic story. As someone in my line of work, I do speak to quite a few wrestlers, and I do speak to a lot of people inside the industry. And Shad Gaspard is one of those people that is a very rare case in this industry. It really is, that I have never, ever, and I've spoken to hundreds of people inside the wrestling industry, I have never, ever heard a bad thing about Shad Gaspard. By all accounts, I myself never got the opportunity or the fortunate opportunity to meet him and speak with him. But everything I've ever heard about him is that, or read about him, is just that he was one of the nicest guys in pro wrestling, in and out of the ring. Nobody ever had a bad thing to say about him, and I think that says a lot. And the outpouring of support we've seen over the last few days for his family, for his wife, for his child, prayers that he will turn up safe and sound, which unfortunately he did not, just shows the person that Shad Gaspard was and the effect he had on people, and the lasting effect he had on everyone that met him. And like I said, regardless, it almost transcends wrestling at this point, but he's a hero for his final actions, for saving his son. Without a doubt, he's in death, he has definitely been proved as a hero, without a shadow of a doubt. And I wanted, obviously, not to just reflect on the horrible events of the last few days. I wanted to sort of do a bit of a tribute, I suppose, and some of the high points in his WWE career. Of course, that's what he's most known for, and he's most famous for, his tag team with his partner JTG in Cryme Tyme. So I thought I'd point out a few a few memorable moments with Shad Gaspard. We've been putting them out on social media as well, on our Twitter account and on our Clips account. So make sure if you want to see some great Shad and Cryme Tyme highlights, be sure to follow us on there. But a couple ones that sprang to mind, of course. I think probably the most famous one is in 2009. Him and JTG. This was at the period of time where Raw had a lot of guest hosts. So you'd have famous celebrities, athletes, TV presenters, actors, etc., coming and host Monday Night Raw. And one week, I believe it was in the summer, around August time. Shaquille O'Neal, a famous basketball player, famous NBA player, hosted Monday Night Raw. It's well known that Shaq's a big wrestling fan. There was rumors he was going to have a match at some point with the Big Show at WrestleMania. That never happened, but that all started from this show. And at the time, Chris Jericho and the Big Show were the WWE Unified Tag Team Champions, Jeri-Show as they were known, or unofficially known, I would say. And that night, Shaq's backup were Cryme Tyme, and they had a main event match between Chris Jericho and the Big Show against Cryme Tyme, and you had Shaq get involved and stare down the Big Show, even knocked the Big Show down with a shoulder block, and it was just a great moment. And the show ended with Shaq and Cryme Tyme, JTD and Shad celebrating, and I suppose that was probably the highlight of their career. It really was, and just a great moment. People still talking about it to this day. People still talk about the Shaq Big Show confrontation, but Shad Gaspard was a part of that along with JTG, and as a tag team, Cryme Tyme were really over. Regardless of what you thought about the gimmick and what you thought about the name of the tag team and the undertones to the gimmick, that can be put aside. I thought they were entertaining as hell. I thought they were really over with the audience. They got great receptions wherever they went. Their promos were entertaining. And Shad really fit that role of being the muscle, complemented with JTG as being a bit of the high flyer. He would, all of that stuff, that worked. I felt that worked really well, and they had great chemistry in and out of the ring. Another moment, and I've posted this a few times on Twitter over the last few days because it makes me laugh till this day. It absolutely gets me to this day, and that is a backstage segment at SummerSlam 2007. Now, this was the period of time where Vince McMahon had just returned back from just after the Chris Benoit tragedy. And it was the whole storyline about who was Vince McMahon's illegitimate son. We obviously would later find out that it would be Hornswoggle, but at SummerSlam 2007, that was still who is going to be Vince McMahon's illegitimate son. So backstage, Vince McMahon's there, or Mr. McMahon is there with the general manager of Raw, William Regal, his executive assistant, Jonathan Coachman, and the SmackDown general manager also in Teddy Long. And then in comes Cryme Tyme, JTD and Shad. They talk about how they could be Vince McMahon's illegitimate son. One of them could be Vince McMahon's illegitimate son because they like to make that money. Yeah. And I've had that stuck in my head the last few days. And it was not annoying, I suppose. Usually that would be a bit annoying to be stuck in your head, but I think this time it serves a good memory of how much fun tag team Cryme Tyme was. But anyway, they start singing that song and they start circling Mr. McMahon, and Teddy Long joins in first, and then Jonathan Coachman joins in after, and then JTG puts a hat on William Regal's head, and Regal has this look of just pure disgust, and then just perfect comedic timing, just completely switches that and then starts dancing with them. It's a hilarious, ridiculous segment. Regal's getting into it, and then what happens? It goes quiet. You're thinking, what's happened here? He turns around. There's Ron Simmons, who hits him with a damn, and just a great segment. It's just such a great segment, and I've posted it on Twitter, and so many people have responded to it saying that they remember it, or it still makes them laugh to this day, and it's just a great moment, and it's a moment that everyone remembers. And when you think of and hear about this horrible news about the unfortunate passing of Shad Gaspard, I think the best way to deal with it is obviously think about his family and think about his wife and his child, but also remember Shad Gaspard for the moments where he truly entertained us, and that is case in point with this segment here. You also had the segment with him and JTG where they auctioned off Lita's belongings after she retired at Survivor Series 2006. I believe JBL even bought a pair of Lita's panties at that period of time. They also had a segment which hits over a bit to me, obviously, because I'm based here in England, in the United Kingdom. But it was one of those UK Raws, an English Raw. I believe they were in Manchester or Nottingham. I can't remember off the top of my head where they were. But it was in the winter over here. And DX had been kicked out of the building by Jonathan Coachman. They had a bounty that they collected on themselves. They had a bounty full of cash, and they decided what they were going to do was to use the bounty to buy tickets. Well, who do you buy tickets from? You buy them from scalpers who just so happen to be JTG and Shad outside of the arena. And Triple H is trying to buy tickets. Shawn Michaels says, "Don't worry, I can speak jive." He actually uses the phrase jive. And we have a hilarious interaction between HBK and Shad and JTG, and that facilitates DX to get back into the building and raise havoc on the show. And just little moments like that. I think Cryme Tyme will be remembered for several reasons. One, for like I said, they were incredibly over with the audience, all segments of the audience really. People thought that maybe they would just appeal to maybe the more older segments of the audience, in terms of people maybe like my age, people in their 20s or the 30s, that sort of tongue-in-cheek humor. But they were also incredibly over with the young audience as well, because they were so over the top and they were cool. Cryme Tyme were cool. Regardless of the name, regardless of the undertones and what have you, when it comes to that gimmick, they were over with all aspects of the audience. But I don't think they should just be remembered for their promos. Promos were great, and the promos were entertaining and fun. But they also had some great matches. I mentioned the main event of Raw against Jericho, but that, in my opinion, was topped with they had a match at SummerSlam 2009, continuing this feud with the Unified Tag Team Champions Chris Jericho and The Big Show. Unfortunately, Chris Jericho and The Big Show would retain in that match, but I went back and watched it when I first heard the news about Shad this week, because I couldn't get him off of my mind. It's such a tragic and heartbreaking situation, so I went back and had a look at that match, and it's a damn good match, I must say. The crowd are into it. The crowd wanted to see Cryme Tyme become tag team champions, and Chris Jericho and The Big Show would retain. But it made me start to think, in terms of that period of time. So Cryme Tyme had two different stints in WWE. So they were there from 2006 to 2007. They randomly got released from their contracts in September of 2007. They were in the middle of a feud with Lance Cade and Trevor Murdoch at the time. And they just randomly got released, but they wouldn't be out of the company long, because they would return in March of 2008, the following year. So they weren't gone for that long. It was just a strange situation. I don't really know the ins and outs as to why there. But if you think about it, they were only there from 2006 to 2010. So only 4 years, but they made a hell of an impact in that period of time. I mentioned the moments with Shaquille O'Neal, Mr. McMahon, Lita, DX, Jericho. They'd certainly made their impact and weren't there for a long period of time, but people remember them to this day, and that's a credit to Shad and to JTG. They tried to do the split up of JTG and Shad of Cryme Tyme towards the end of Shad Gaspard's run. They turned him into a big monster heel, and then he lost strangely to JTG at Extreme Rules 2010 in a strap match, which only went, I think, about 4 minutes. And then later on that year, in November 19th to be exact, of 2010, he was gone from the company. And it's a shame, because I think he could have had a potential to be a great big heel. Get out of that Cryme Tyme gimmick and see something else. He was only 39 at the time of his passing, so that's 10 years ago. So he would have been 29 then. You think of how old 29 is in terms of wrestling years. That's a baby. That's an absolute baby. So it's a shame we never got to see him in that singles run. I would have been fine with him being Cryme Tyme for the longest time anyway. Another bit of news as well is that after wrestling, he did pop up in the media a couple of times. He was in the movie Get Hard with Will Ferrell and Kevin Hart. Played a funny interaction there with Kevin Hart in that movie, which I really enjoyed. It was a fun movie. If you haven't seen that, go and watch it. I recommend that film. And he also appeared in the news in 2016 in December. Shad Gaspard actually prevented the armed robbery of a Springs, Florida gas station, where he was approached by an intoxicated man who was intent on robbing the clerk, and Gaspard shoved him, took away his gun, and restrained him till police arrived. So I mentioned earlier about him being a hero in death and the way that he saved his son. He sacrificed himself for his son. A hero on television as a babyface and bringing entertainment and smiles to our faces. But he was also a hero in the other sense of the word, that he prevented an armed robbery. He was really was a real life superhero in his death, in his life, and in his entertainment character on television as well. So it really is a tragic story, as I mentioned, and I'm absolutely heartbroken for his family, for his young son, for his wife, for his friends. The outpouring of support that you've seen on social media is phenomenal and well worthy of a truly, truly gentle giant, as without a shadow of doubt. And at this difficult time, just in the world and society at the moment, it's just more horrible news, and just reaffirms that, how we really want this 2020 to end and just start again, because it's just more horrible news. And just the story is, like I said, I've said it several times on social media, that I really can't get this story out of my head. It's so tragic, it's so heartbreaking, and like I said, the thoughts of everyone here at Wrestle News 365 go out to his family, go out to his friends, and go out to his loved ones. It's just heartbreaking. It really is. If you want to remember Shad, go back and watch his matches on the WWE Network. I've mentioned a few there, but just to finish, once again, I'd just like to reiterate that our thoughts go out to his family. He was a hero in death, he was a hero in life, and he was a hero on TV. Rest in peace, Shad Gaspard. You will be missed.